Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the CleanTech Lithium PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded meeting, attendees will be in listen-only mode. Please submit your questions at any time. Just use the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your question and press send. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll. And I'd now like to hand over to Daniel Fox-Davis. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, or good evening, actually, here from I'm currently still back in Dubai, so we'll head on to one. But listen, welcome back, Steve. Look at this, twice in 2 weeks. It's twice
in a few days.
I know, actually, I'm moving into after the weekend. So obviously another positive, really great announcement out this morning. But I thought it'd be really good if we could just run through it. And also, a number of people in the chat rooms have been saying, "Where is Gordon?" So we asked Gordon to join in again today. Rumours, there's a bit of a lack of way of Wally, as Gordon's been running around the world. So I thought it'd be quite useful, Gordon, maybe at the end. Well, obviously, I mean, you'll jump in. I thought we have a bit of conversation about the RNS. But as you are the guy that went out to Chicago at the time, I thought it'd be quite good maybe if we could just flick back. I mean, we covered off last week, but just talk to you about how the trip was, what you saw, the people down there, and et cetera, et cetera. But we'll come back onto that. But with Steve, yes, so RNS today, and can I just ask us to go through it, use layman's language, and just remember that the bulk of our audience is non-technical. So it'd be really good to explain the detail, how it was, where this fits in your expectation, and how it fits in our critical path.
Okay, sure, Dan. Okay, we've had a bundle of RNSs coming out over the last few days on our pilot plant work with Conductive, on the sale, and now this one on the resource update. And this resource update and the sale, which we put out yesterday, the previous day, are totally interlinked. Now, the work that we've done is with an independent consultant, internationally known, Montgomery & Associates, probably the most experienced at doing lithium brine resource estimation in Latin America. And we wanted to work with Montgomery to review all the work that we've done over the last few years in all the drilling work and the analysis and leading up to the resource estimate, to make sure that when we do our ASX listing and we bring in potential strategic investors, that all of this geological resource work will stand up to very detailed technical due diligence. And they've done a great job. They've put all the information together in a massive report. It'll all be public in the prospectus in the ASX listing. It's probably about a 250-page report on everything that we've done. And the culmination of this is saying that the current resource that we're declaring at Laguna Verde is 1.63 million tons at a grade of 176 ppm lithium. Now, this is a pretty significant resource compared to most lithium projects around the world. This is a large resource. From the work we've done in our scoping studies, we're expecting to be able to operate for 20 plus years. The scoping studies were done at 20,000 tons a year. So this is a very significant project. Now, when we compare to what we declared in 2023, we're not comparing apples with apples. In 2023, we were looking at what is the resource in the entire Laguna Verde basin, and we came up with a number of 1.77 million tons. But the Chilean government has introduced their national lithium strategy in the past year. We are applying for a sale, and they have put together a streamlined process that we can go into a direct negotiation if we propose an area for exploitation where we demonstrate we have over 80% of the mining licenses. And this is what we've done here. This is the proposed area we put in for our sale application, which is 1.63 million tons, and it is a smaller area than the overall basin. But we can show we've got more than 80% of the mining licenses. When we look at the grade of 176 ppm lithium, that's eminently suitable for direct lithium extraction. Is a bit lower than it was last year, but we've encountered one lower grade area to the southeast of the deposit. But this is absolutely in the ballpark of what direct lithium extraction can handle.
Steve, I think one of the questions was that came up, and we haven't had that many questions here, but just looking at the Telegram chat rooms, some people were concerned, I think, just to understand how this impacts on the chat we were having last week about doing 20,000 tons per main license, because obviously we're talking about just Laguna Verde here, and people were extrapolating that to say that it was a 600,000. Obviously, we're on the model, we're talking about two 20,000 ton a year projects. But does this in any way impact the conversation that we had last week about a 30-year mine life and 20,000 tons a year?
Well, the resource is 1.6 million. It's a large resource. We're going into the next stage of work, with Montgomery, with the hydrogeological modeling, with the pumping test work which they're doing, and we still want to do more of that to determine what is the maximum production rate we can sustain from this deposit without impacting negatively the aquifer or the surface water features. Now, the scoping study, we made the assumption that will be 20,000 tons a year, and Montgomery will come up. Will that be a sustainable production rate? Could it be a bit more? Would it have to be a bit less? And that will come out in the pre-feasibility study.
But I think the main thing I was sort of driving there towards, Steve, was that this announcement doesn't impact on anything we said, and there's no reason for us to believe based on this that there's any reason. So, and the main thing is that the resource here on the polygon area, which isn't the entire license, is still 1.63, and we were talking about doing 600,000 tons over the 30-year mine life out of there. So effectively, we're looking at taking out a little bit over a third on the life one. But again, as you said, more work needs to be done.
It's probably worth, if I can just jump in there, Dan, probably worth mentioning that, just remind people about the scoping study, depending on what the lithium price is, obviously, but anything beyond 15, 20,000 tons just throws off money. It does. I mean, and remember the running cost is very low. It's $4,000 a ton. So actually, if you look at, where, the rate that we do, we'll obviously optimize the rate over time as we bring the project on. But the economics, anything beyond $10,000 a ton are just, you're talking about $100 to $200 million a year of net profit in net cash flow. So the rate will be determined by a number of factors, as Steve said, but by the porosity of the wells and so on. But fundamentally, this is good news. This 1.6 million and the measured and indicated gives us a really good base for the PFS and allows us to drive the project forward. So we're really pleased at what we've seen. And as Steve mentioned, it's an extensive report. I mean, I was just looking at it before, and it's a huge piece of work which will stand up to any scrutiny by any party when we bring them in post PFS.
Fantastic. I'm just doing a Telegram one. Okay, well, let's have a look into a little bit more detail, Steve.
Yeah, so this is Laguna Verde. This is the central lagoon, and we have the aquifer is all the surrounding area around the lagoon. Now, we've done a whole number of boreholes where we've analyzed the lithium content, and that has come up with the porosity that comes up with the overall lithium resource of 1.6 million. But we've done extensive geophysics in this area, and Montgomery have been analyzing that and saying, look, the geophysics indicates that you still have a hypersaline aquifer at depth, which you haven't really explored yet. And they're recommending we put down 3 additional boreholes to test those aquifers, which can potentially lead to an increase in the resource, and even more an increase in the measured and indicated resource, which is what we need for the pre-feasibility study. So we've taken this on board. We aim to do these 3 additional wells as soon as we can this year, and do the other work that Montgomery has recommended. which is to do re-injection boreholes to demonstrate not only can we extract the lithium from the aquifer successfully, but we can put the spent brine back into the aquifer without impacting the aquifer negatively. So this is the work program that Montgomery has advised us to do as soon as we have completed with the pre-feasibility study.
And this work was actually used in support of the CL application. So, you know, the Montgomery report is a part of that whole CL application, and in evidencing, one, that we've drilled 11 wells. Not many other parties in Chile have drilled anywhere near that in the last few years. And the results of the outcome of all of that work, which then obviously feeds into DLE and everything else. So it's all joined up thinking. And actually all three reports have come together. I described it as buses. You effectively had a bus scenario. You wait for ages for a bus and nothing comes, and then suddenly three come at once. But all of these three are interlinked in the storyline of moving our project forward through PFS, CL application, and so forth. So this is a culmination of an extensive piece of work over the course of the last few months to get to this point, and actually just happens to be that they've all come pretty much together. So it's been an interesting process getting the RNSs into shape.
So when we look at the application for the sale, it needs to be in a specific area. When we did the resource for the basin last year, you can imagine the entire rectangle here was the what was the basin. But the blue outline that we have here is what we've proposed to the government of Chile. It captures, it has over 80% of the licenses are CleanTech Lithium's licenses. Obviously, just under 20% are third-party licenses. But it captures the major part of the resource, which is the 1.63 million tons. And just to remind people, the sale is different from the mining license. The mining license gives you the right to explore and exploit everything but lithium. It is only the sale that gives you the right to explore lithium, whether it is on your own licenses or another party's licenses. So even though this outline has some third-party licenses in it, the sale gives the right to exploit lithium from this entire sale area. And what we aim to do is in the application that we've made, and we talked about last week, is to fulfill a number of criteria. One was you must be a participant in the lithium industry, you must have financial capacity, evidenced by your balance sheet, and third, must demonstrate you have 80% of the licenses. Then we can be approved to go into the streamline process and direct negotiation of the sale contract with government. And we would expect that to be declared in terms of the administration timeline in the middle of April this year.
While we're on that, so Steve, has that all been updated now? That's all been uploaded?
It's all done. Yes, it's
all in.
All in.
Okay. While we're on that, sorry, just on the drilling before you get back, I'm going to jump into a couple of questions as we go to break it up. We've got two here, and I'll deal with them as we go on before we launch on, if I may, Steve. So someone's just asking is where do we rank? We're talking about large deposits, but where do we rank? Are we like a top 10, a top 30? I mean, where do we sit as a size of deposit for brine? I know it's hard to go between brine and hard rock, but
I was looking at a listing of deposits in terms of size, and I think by the time you get to the top 4 out of 60 lithium projects, you get to a resource of 2.5 million tons of LCE. So having the 2.5 million across our two projects, and with expansion potential, these are already significant deposits.
So yeah, I mean, I think the question was, Gordon was probably placed to say it should definitely be in the top 10 at the moment of undeveloped projects.
I would have thought so. You've also got to remember the grade, because I'm not going to mention names of companies, but some companies have got larger resources.
Go on.
A very low grade. Some companies have got grades of 50 parts per million, which makes it really difficult. Even with DLE. So, and then you've got other companies with a smaller resource, but with a slightly better grade. But We've got, I think the 175 is fine. It works perfectly well for DLE, and actually, as you say, there's companies that are doing it in different ways. But the 1.6 million, that'll do very nicely.
Steve, we've got any other color on, but yeah, I mean, it's a bit like saying this whole thing. You know, I remember when I first got into mine 25 years ago and was looking more at gold, and you'd have somebody would have like a million ounces over here and a million ounces over here, and they try and value it the same. But obviously, the grade is very different. If you've got somebody with a 2% grade and somebody with a 10% grade, then your economics entirely different. And a project sitting out with you know, in the middle of nowhere versus in the middle of, say, of Africa, where things somebody's just off a highway, or in our case here in Latin America, being really close to the main road, being really close to, on a relative mining basis, to power, the ability to actually get onto the paved roads, and then we have to ship our ore, the infrastructure of people in Chile. These are all things like, you could take exactly the same resource at the same grade and put it in the middle of, you know, Zimbabwe or something, and the economics are entirely different. One of the reasons why I always like CleanTech was because it is in Chile. It is a mining country. You've got a huge amount of people there that you could hire and recruit, which is very important to actually put the project into production. And not forgetting that it's, you know, I want to keep coming to the point, it is a free trade country with the US. Trump's going to be inaugurated any moment now, if he isn't already. And despite his various ones there, but, you know, Elon Musk is going to be pushing. And I think it's actually going to be very positive for the lithium market. Sorry, Gordon, I was cutting you off there.
No, I think I pretty much said what I was going to say.
To just add one more thing, though, to follow on from Dan's comments, is we're going to be making battery grade lithium carbonate to sell directly into the United States, Europe, and the rest of the world. Unlike all of the production from Africa and Australia, which is concentrate, which has to go to China for processing before we can enter into the market. And as we know, with Trump's inauguration now and what's happening with geopolitics, it's uncertain. And clearly the rest of the world does want to become more independent of the Chinese supply chain, and we can be a major part of that.
No, I think there's a lot to be said for that gets overlooked. Steve, just one last point before you run on. We just had a question in from James H. One, actually, Gordon saying welcome to see you back. But is this now the final drilling? We've completed the drilling before the PFS, or do we have current drilling ongoing at the moment, or is there any more to do? And would you expect much more drilling between the PFS and the DFS?
No, we finished for the PFS. This is it. This is the resource which goes into the PFS and the technical assessment for the ASX listing. We want to be drilling, and we'll be drilling not just the rest of 2025, but we'll want to continue with our drilling activities, because the 1.6 we believe can be expanded further. And then we've got further drilling in our next project, Viento Andino, at some time when we've got the funds to do that.
Well, I've got you here. So where looking at the map that you've got up here, where do you think we would extend to, or where do you think the increase from the 1.6 would come from?
If you go to from the lagoon, that blue in the middle, and you go down towards the southwest in that area, we believe that that's got potential to increase the resource further and the measured and indicated. If you go from the lagoon to the north of the northern boundary up there, and to the northeast towards that arrow on the top right hand side.
And if I can just jump in, just something. Another point to make is just to remind people, our aquifer, and basically the target is between 100 meters and 500 meters. It's really shallow, and whereas some of our other peers who've got large resource have got to drill 14,000 feet. We're just below the surface. So actually, you look at the cost of the drilling, you can look at the cost of the infrastructure that's supporting that. We're really blessed in the fact that we've got a really shallow reservoir, but a really good cap between the actual, the surface of the aquifer, the laguna, and the start of the aquifer. So that really helps us in terms of economics, in terms of a number of other things. But it makes life a lot easier when you're drilling shallow wells compared to wells which are thousands of feet deep.
Right. Well, gentlemen, I know we want to keep the point short. I think that's a very good point, Gordon. Let's take on a little bit more, Steve, and we'll go through, and then I'll get back to Gordon about his trip.
Yeah, pre-feasibility study is ongoing. I explained the other day. We've completed all the process engineering with Lanshan. We're waiting on the well field design from Montgomery, and we're waiting for final capital costs and operating costs from Lanshan in China, and then we'll start putting the report together, and it's still scheduled for the end of this quarter.
Okay, that's looking grand. I got a couple of questions that are coming in, so I'm just going to check someone. Pilot plant.
Gordon, you were there. What was your impression?
I was actually quite amazed at the whole thing. I mean, I was very late before I kind of was asked to go. And but you know, if you look at the photograph there, bottom left, that's me standing next to our tanks. Those are our tanks that were shipped from Chile all the way through to Chicago over the course of X number of weeks. You know, they've got two of the big tanks there, and they're pretty big. And then next to that, on the right-hand side, was this very large facility that Forward Water had for the start of their process. And there was about 18 people there on the day. Conductive had invited a number of parties along, including some investors who were fascinated by what they saw. And actually, as we walked through the process, and I actually got to the eureka moment, and it was literally a eureka moment. You see the photograph bottom right there. When they opened up the filter and down came the lithium carbonate, it literally came down in a big splat. It was actually, it's really warm as well. You can't touch it. It's got to, you know, and you then would take that forward into the next process, the drying process. But it was a high five moment all around, you know, because one for Conductive, you know, having delivered this and gone through the process, and it was really fascinating. And you know, there was a big conversation point afterwards, and I think, you know, we've had interesting conversations after that with some of the parties that, you know, I mentioned, who've been just watching the thing. And I think this is another stepping stone. You know, we've got big learnings from this process. I mean, there was inevitably, it's a pilot process, so it was a pilot process, and there were things that went, a lot of things that went right. There's a few things that went wrong, and I say wrong in the sense of, we now know things that we need to resolve. I mean, Steve's talked before about some of the purification that we need to tighten up on, but that's absolutely manageable. We know exactly how to do that now, and new facilities being brought into bear on that. And we'll be, you know, producing battery grade lithium. And I think, Steve, you know, we announced last week we're at 99.78%. That's pretty impressive on the first run. So, you know, as we refine things, working with Conductive, and the Conductive team's been fantastic. And they've got big plans for expansion, you know, and working with us. So we'll see how that whole partnership develops over the coming time. But it was a really good trip, and I think, you know, it's good learning for us, and allows us to move forward. And I think, Steve, from the moving forward, I think you've mentioned before nanofiltration. You know, there's things that we've learned from that process that we bring into bear.
Yeah, and this is really what we're going to be looking at in the next few months, is getting the pilot plant up into producing a large quantity of material which is battery grade, and we're looking at meeting the Chinese standard, which is the highest standard in the world, by putting in nanofiltration and other washing stages. So we're very confident we will get there, and then can start to introduce that product to potential off-takers and strategic partners. So we're busy with the PFS at the moment. The ASX listing is the next one that we're going to be working on.
Steve, sorry, can I buzz you back one page a second? Sorry, because we had a question there that comes up. So Toby just put a question saying, is there still appetite for the potential strategic partners under NDA? Could we see some of them securing their spot before the DFS? And funny enough, just as he popped that, you've got on the screen here. So I want to bring us back to the strategic partner and then the DFS. So we just sort of touch on that. Obviously, we're talking to a number of people. And while, you know, you'll do a deal when it's the right deal, but I just wanted to answer Toby's question there on his behalf. About whether you see them securing.
The strategic investors we bring in immediately we've finished the pre-feasibility study. They want to see three things. Are we making battery-grade material from the pilot plant? And we'll say, yes, we are, and we'll be making it at quantity to provide samples to potential strategic partners. Do you have the right to produce? We want to be in the position that we are in direct negotiation for the sale. We need the sale to produce lithium, and we think by the middle of April, we'll be in direct negotiation with government. And third, every large company wants to see the pre-feasibility study to look at the technical and economic viability before they really want to get engaged on substantive discussions on potential finance for the company and offtake agreements. And that comes post PFS. Normally,
just jumping in there, Steve. So I know some people ask on the Telegram group. So one of the key things there, just to clarify, is we are hoping to go into direct negotiation, which is then just a process. We're happy. So from our side, we think by going into direct negotiation, it will reduce or de-risk the company from a permitting and the license to extract the lithium. So that's one of the key three ones. The PFS gives you the size and the economics and the third-party validation to what we as the company and as shareholders, or in my case as the broker, all believe. And then the third one, which is what we have got now, which is the proof of concept of actually having physically produced a battery grade lithium that we can take people to show or send them in a nice little, box container. So we've got the lithium. That was a key one. And I was amazed that the market didn't respond more, to be honest. We're hoping then by April, you said, Steve, for the direct negotiation?
Mid-April, yes.
Great. And then obviously the timing for the PFS we're hoping now is for?
End of Q1.
End of Q1. And then the other question that's come up for this is, so in a perfect world, subject to financing and availability, et cetera, how long between the PFS and the DFS would you expect? And give yourself a bit of wriggle room here, Steve, because I know people come back, but in a general environment.
In a general environment, if you've done a solid PFS, so you're just going into more detailed engineering, you're looking at 9 to 12 months.
Okay. So we have then the first quarter. So beginning of the DFS at end of the year, beginning of the first quarter of next 2020. What are we? 2026. Okay.
And that gives, down, sorry, but in there. Just on the strategics. I mean, we've told the market we've got 5 under NDA, and they're happy, and they've been watching, and they're waiting for the PFS. But we've had inbounds. Literally in the last week, we had an email from a household name car company who wants to look at the PFS and the data and that sort of thing. So we won't be sitting back. We'll be talking to those entities. We'll be actually proactively going out, and we've got a plan and a program that we'll go out, and all the people. And you can imagine it'll be a pretty wide breadth, and then we'll see where we go from there. But we're in good shape now with all these documents coming together, all the things we've been talking about. We've got a really good package we can put in front of strategics. And that company, that car company that I mentioned that came to us last week, has just invested 75 million in another DLE company. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, let's be careful how too much data we give in we have some very sharp and bright shareholders. Okay, Steve, great. Sorry, I just want to bring you back because it was a question from Toby and it was just nicely there on the timeline. So sorry.
Yeah. So that strategic partner, offtake agreements, financing will be putting all that together in parallel post the PFS, and you only get to final drawdown of funding on completion of the DFS. So all those agreements we want in place before we complete the DFS.
Yep. Okay.
And current things which are on the table. ASX is coming ahead very, very fast. Gordon is leading that effort in updating the prospectus with all of this new information. We've been waiting for Australia to come back from their summer holidays. They have a long summer holiday, which ends on Australia Day on the 26th of January. And then we'll be getting very active with the ASX there. So we talked about the operating contract and strategic partners. So the sooner we can get all this work done and get into substantive discussions will be great for us. So that we can get on and get the financing to take us through the next stage of DFS, EIA, permitting, and all the additional drilling work that we would like to do.
And in terms of additional catalysts as well, Daniel, where the company's been working behind the scenes on a couple of independent analyst notes. They've been holding off. They'll be based on the PFS, in other words, looking at the outcome and that. So those will be available. to people. So we would expect that to come out pretty quickly after the PFS. And as I say, it's a couple of independent entities. And also you can assume that once we're on ASX, I mean, Tony, CEO, will be fully up and running by then. As full-time CEO. One of his major targets is going to be to get our messaging out into the Australian market even more. So working with Tommy, yourself, and others is really getting the Australian market up and running. I want
to come back on that because people I know people on the Telegram, we talked for a long time, but I wanted to reiterate to the shareholders that the issue that came up last summer was a procedural and structural issue, which was no basis on the company. And then we obviously had to do the bridge, but that then changes all the numbers. So it changes the issued share capital. It also changes the office of warrants out. Then the decision of do we go before Christmas or not? And the general consensus was from Australia that people were going to pack up early for the year. And really, if we weren't out by the end of November, it was going to be a problem. Australia does go away from really the 15th until Australia Day. And then for the Australian market, it was felt that you have a problem that you need to draw a line of the data that goes into a prospectus. And so we can't put ourselves in a position where we're going out with a prospectus and then we come up with information. So we come up with the sale application, or we come up with the increased resource, which we knew is coming, because then your prospectus is out of date from the ASX's point of view, and they'll ask you to go and update it because they regard that all the Australian shareholders have to have all the material information available. And so you are once you're listed, it's fine. But the process of getting listing, particularly when you're on two exchanges, there's been a lot of spinning plates, and Gordon's been doing an excellent job. And I know there's some frustration, as from my side as well. But we need people to be back at their desks. We've waited this long. We might as wait that they're back in. They're coming in from Australia Day, and then it's my job to then put together and reach back out. We know who we want to talk to, and we've spoken to all of them in the past, but we need to get back. Some of them may want to have an updated meeting, particularly with the new CEO. So we had to organize the logistics of the timing that he's coming on board, because it's quite important that now we've announced him, that people can see him and he's available. So having taken on the job, he wanted to do his family time, and quite reasonably, because he's going to be doing a hell of a lot of traveling over the next 12 months. Then we knew these announcements are coming out, and we take guidance from our Australian lawyers, and their advice was we need these announcements out. Then they need to feed into the document, which is already being done because we knew roughly what these were going to be, and then we can crack on. But my flights are booked. T's going to be joining down there. We're going to see with Tommy and with Tom. So we're hoping it'll come together in the next weeks. I can't give any sort of specific timeline, but it's the next priority, and I've been waiting for these two to come out. So I just wanted to put that in there because the Telegram group comes up. Gordon, anything else that you really wanted to observe just at the moment?
No, I think you mentioned it quite well. Spinning plates. We're talking about buses and spinning plates. There's it's the old Swan scenario, feet going like mad under the surface. I think it clearly is frustrating at times for shareholders wondering what's going on. But there's you can assume that with Steve holding the tiller, that there's a lot of rigor in the process. I mean, we talked about a 1,200-page CL application. Let's put it in context. It's a stonking application. I mean, I read it, and it's just beautifully put together, and it's a big story. And I doubt there's anybody out there who'll put an application in like that, just because they haven't done the work that we've done. So you've got the sale application, you've got this resource report now, where you've got 220 pages of technical data, which we can put in front of anybody and not stand up because of the name of the company that's done it for us. And that, plus the battery grade, it's all coming together nicely. And with the ASX listing coming up, we're really excited to get on there because we think there's going to be a real, kick in Australia. I still comment on one other company who's 3 times our market cap, 1/3 our resource. Work that out. Just doesn't make any sense. So they're doing something right on Australia and in ASX. So we have to do that where we're on there too. So PR and marketing and our story in Australia will be a big thing in the coming months as we tell the story of why we're different and why we're cleaner, and why they shouldn't, support us. So we would hope to see a real kick once we're on ASX. And with Tony being there and based there, other than when he's traveling, you can assume that he'll be ticking all the boxes with the relevant people in Australia. Tony met the Australian ambassador, interesting, when he visited Chile before Christmas. Had a really good welcome. Met the commercial attaché and so on. So there's a really good dialogue going there with Tony now. So he'll be up and running absolutely full time, as say, within the very near future.
Fantastic. I was just last couple of questions. Stuart, you put in a call about the relative large. The trades weren't that much. I was just looking. Sorry, what Gordon was finishing off there on mobile Bloomberg here. We did about 500,000 shares today, which at 40.5 pence was only about 60,000. So it really wasn't relatively large. I mean, we used to be doing this is consolidation about 250. We used to be doing like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million. So we had a nice response. But the question is whether it's selling or buying. I think they're all going through at the mid. So somebody was selling and somebody was buying, but it wasn't a great volume day. I think the UK market's still a bit down, and the overall markets are a bit distracted with companies. But guys, thank you very much. I think it's very useful. We'll try and keep it brief. One, Steve, is there anything else you wanted to add on? We were going to try and keep it to 30 minutes, but I know I've been going on as well.
No, I just hope that these webinars are meaningful for shareholders. We try and get across all the detail of the work that we do. And I think we've got a very exciting year ahead. Lots of stuff planned, but I think the key one that people want to see is us engaging with strategic investors, and we can only do that from a position of strength when we've got all of the work completed.
No, very much appreciated. And I know, Steve and Gordon, you're not on the Telegram group because it wouldn't be proper to do so, and sometimes get in. But I do get a lot of comments. People do appreciate just the the feedback on the ongoing. And I think we can do these sort of once little and often. But gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. And with that, I'll pass back to meet the company.
That's great. Thank you, Daniel, Gordon, and Steve. Can I please ask investors not to close this session, as we'll now automatically redirect you in the order that you can provide feedback, and management can better understand your views and expectations. On behalf of the management team of CleanTech Lithium, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon or good evening to you all.